Now, the realm of the church is different because although human rights essentially emerged from Christian understandings of pluralism and tolerance in the wake of the Enlightenment, there is nevertheless a greater desire in church circles to define persecution much more in line with biblical truth as opposed to legal precedent. And this is possible to attempt because persecution is a word used in the Bible. It's most commonly used as a verb, meaning to be pursued. And it carries the idea that when we belong to Christ, we become the object of a pursuit from the opponents of Christ, spiritual and indeed otherwise. So the Bible is quite clear on what persecution is, but it's not so clear as to whether the term persecution should be reserved for mild or severe forms of the pursuit. So here's a selection of the most well-known definitions of Christian persecution in the world today. In the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, a very important source, Geoffrey Bromiley defines persecution like this, and it's rather a lengthy quote. He says, "Persecution is the suffering or pressure, mental, moral, or physical, which authorities, individuals, or crowds inflict on others, especially for opinions or beliefs, with a view to their subjection by recantation, silencing, or as a last resort, execution." Now, that's a very broad definition and quite a mouthful. In Faith That Endures, I distilled much of that down to this single sentence. I said, Christian persecution is any hostility experienced from the world as a result of one's identification with Christ. This can include hostile attitudes, words, and actions. There's another definition from Nick Ripkin in his book, The Insanity of Obedience. He says, persecution is a negative reaction by government, ideologies, society, and family to the presence of Christ, incarnated through a positive witness by believing individuals and communities. And then there's an important definition from Charles Teason that actually a lot of religious rights organizations use. He defines persecution as any unjust action of mild to intense levels of hostility directed at Christians of varying levels of commitment, resulting in varying levels of harm, which may or may not necessarily prevent or limit these Christians' ability to practice their faith or appropriately propagate their faith as it is considered from the victim's perspective, each motivation having religion, namely the identification of its victims as Christian, as its primary motivator. Again, another very lengthy definition. In the Standing Strong materials, Paul Estabrooks and Jim Cunningham use a verse in Luke 6:22, as their definition. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man. So they have the AIR principles, H-E-I-R, hate, exclude, insult, reject. That's how they understand persecution.